Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Clemens and Mr. Marshall, and this is U.S. History Flipped. Sorry guys, I'm making a falsetto voice for Mr. Marshall. He can't be with us today, but this is U.S. History Flipped, and we are on the topic of industrialization, immigration, and urbanization. And Mr. Marshall started us off with the first few videos. Maybe he did a falsetto of me. No one knows. But so that's what our topic has been that we've been talking about. And our topic that we're going to start talking about now with my videos is immigration. And the thing that's going to let you know when you need to write is this little boat that's sailing along. So immigration, oh my gosh, guys, obviously our nation, no matter what, is a nation of immigrants. You could even, if you're really trying to stretch it, say that Native Americans were immigrants because they came across the Bering Straits thousands and thousands of years ago. So all of us are immigrants and we all have different stories. Right now, we're going to kind of review a little bit. So you'll notice that there's no boat sailing on this. We're going to review and kind of talk about. Now, I'm not going to talk about the Native Americans immigrating over because we did that sort of the first week of school. And the other group that I'm not going to talk about are Africans that came, because we have talked about that. And obviously their experience is very different because they did not choose to immigrate. So during colonial times, people were coming from England, Germany, Sweden, Holland. Basically, we're talking Northern and Western Europe. And the reason why these guys are coming is they want religious freedom, so like the Puritans, or we like to call them the Pilgrims, and economic improvement. They're hoping that they can make some money. Remember, we talked about in Jamestown, they're searching all over the place for gold, hoping that they can get rich like the Spanish did. And so, you know, we've got pictures of these guys kind of struggling out in the wilderness. You know, here it is, sort of our first Thanksgiving kind of thing, and here they are. I just like their little neck ruffs that they have. Very, very early immigration, very primitive, very, you know, definitely struggling in a very different respect than later immigrants, because they're carving out the land. Then the next group of immigrants we have is called old immigration. And this is, now we've gotten our independence, remember 1776, the date we have to memorize, Declaration of Independence. And by this point, we've actually gone through the articles and we have the Constitution. So we're talking very early, like, you know, President Washington through the 1870s, so after the Civil War. And so now it's a different place. Now we've got Ireland, Germany, and Scandinavia. And so Scandinavia is like Denmark, Finland, oh my God, Norway, thank you. So Sweden. So yeah, so that's where these guys are coming from. Now, here's the difference. First off, these two groups don't speak English, so they're not liked as much. But the Irish, there's a huge prejudice against the Irish. And part of the reason for the prejudice is, you know, we were very much settled by the British previously. The British have always kind of had a thing with the Irish, with this sort of struggle over land. And the Irish, you know, they're considered to be lower class. And, oh, God forbid, speaking of God, these guys are Catholic. And most of the people that had come in that first wave, that colonial wave, had been Protestant. By the way, all Christian, all right, at this point. Were there non-Christians coming in? Yes, but very, very few. All Christians. And so these guys are looked down upon because they're coming and they're poor. They're coming because they're starving because of famine. They're coming because, you know, we're in times of revolution. Like you guys might remember talking about last year in Global 2 with Otto von Bismarck and, you know, the reunification, you know, not the reunification, the unification of Prussia and all that stuff. So these guys, they're settling in the cities. For the most part, the Irish are settling in the cities, and the folks from Scandinavia and Germany, Germany's kind of split, but definitely the Scandinavians are moving to the Western United States. And so these guys are coming over en masse in big boats. They're coming to the cities, they're getting out, and a lot of times they're definitely taken advantage of. Yeah, so this is a political cartoon. It says the poor house from Galway. Galway is in Ireland, And again, you can just tell in the way that it's pictured here, that, it's just all these people crammed in. And here it is, the balance of trade with Great Britain still seems to be against us. So this is not, and it describes them as 650 paupers. So they're not, the people who were there in America were not very big fans of these lowly people that are coming to the United States. And so, yeah, absolutely, you end up seeing signs like help wanted, no Irish need apply. And that's going on in the cities. In the West, with these Scandinavians and these Germans, they're building houses that look a lot like the houses that they had back at home. They're setting up families like they did back at home, and they're becoming farmers. And here they are farming, looking very spiffy there and showing all the stuff that they have. All right. Then we have new immigration, and this, even though it doesn't seem to be animating, you're writing it down. Yay! So new immigration. So now we're talking the late 1800s up through basically the start of the Great Depression. And so these guys are coming from a different place. These guys are coming from Southern and Eastern Europe. So a lot of you guys, if you're Italian, you can trace back your immigration to this time. If you're Polish, you could trace back your immigration to this time. Russian, a lot of these Lithuanian, Estonian, Yugoslavian, from back in this time. Also, we're getting a lot of people from Asia, specifically China and Japan, and then a lot of Jewish immigrants. Now, there were Jewish immigrants that came before, but these Jewish immigrants that are coming are poorer. And again, you might remember from Global 2, learning about the pogroms, how people, the police in Russia would just come and beat up the Jewish people. Well, they weren't happy about that, and then they came on over here. Also, if you watch Fiddler on the Roof, it's the same sort of idea. These guys aren't making it out west, into the Midwest to farm. For the most part, they're going to cities. And, in Japan and China, from Japan and China, they're, settling in the Californian cities. And they absolutely face nativism. And what the term nativism means is basically you were born here and you think that people who are born here are the best, that you like those people versus immigrants. And do we still have nativism today? I would say we absolutely still have nativism today, where you hear people say, oh, why don't they just learn the language? Or, just this whole idea about immigration reform. So we definitely still have nativism today. It's not a new thing. It's been going on for a long, long time. And so as a result, you end up getting a lot of these, so this is something saying, oh, yeah, come on over. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it says a Happy New Year, and then here it's written in Hebrew, and so this is supposed to be a positive thing, like, oh, look, here these poor guys are coming. Oh, look, things are going to be great for them. They're welcoming them with open arms. The other thing you see is advertisements in Europe that they're like, yeah, there's 5 million acres of land for immigrants. Go to Texas, and well, if I'm in Europe and I'm really poor, I'm thinking, gosh, I'm going to come here. I'm going to get some land. It wasn't as easy as that. These guys are coming to Ellis Island, and they're having a pretty nasty experience. And, they're getting their health checked out. They're, looking at them. You see that they've got them kind of stripped down here. So if you weren't healthy, you could be rejected and be sent back. Here's a family. Here she is, it's the mom, and maybe she's meeting the husband there, or maybe her husband died on the way with 3 children. I feel like there's supposed to be other pictures here. I love this picture. This is basically a street down in New York City, just showing how crazy it is in terms of just so much activity going on, and extremely diverse with the amount of different people and different languages. Here's another family. I think these guys are German, either that or they're Scandinavian. I like their little sweaters. These guys are Eastern European, and you could tell by what they're wearing on their head, and they are enjoying big fish, which who doesn't like a big fish? All right, Ellis Island. I actually mentioned this in class, but I'll say it again. These guys, you look at Ellis Island, if you ever get to go there, it's really pretty, but the architecture actually was the architecture that they used for prisons. It's, to them back then, it was not pretty. It was, seen as like a prison. And here's everybody coming across, and they would pin, information to you. A lot of people obviously couldn't speak English. When you go inside Ellis Island, there's this big hall where you're all just kind of sitting here waiting for them to get through you. Up on top is where they're going through the health inspections, and basically you've got all your belongings that you can carry, and that's it. So think about, even in your bedroom, if you could only take what you could carry, that would be a really big problem. A lot of times what would end up happening was there would be a lot of orphans, because people would come over, and on their way, parents would pass away. And so there were quite a few orphans. We didn't have the means back then to take care of them. So what are they doing? They're let in, and then they're, kind of resorting to a life of crime when they get going. Reactions against immigration, we have the Know Nothing Party, and they actually started before the Civil War. So when I was talking about nativism being around for a long time, it really has. And by the way, the vote is here to write. They wanted to limit the voting rights. They died before the Civil War. This party died out before the Civil War, but obviously they, their ideas stayed around. Later on, we got a law passed called the Chinese Exclusion Act, which limited Chinese immigration. And then at the turn of the century, we get the Gentleman's Agreement, which stopped immigration from Japan. So when you look at this, they're specifically targeting people from Asia as people that were undesirable in the United States. And, you can look at this political cartoon, and again, it's this sort of very racist caricature of, a Chinese person, and, it's supposed to be like sort of Uncle Sam or something here, and saying the Chinese must go. Definitely not a very nice thing. Again, you're writing this. They had literacy tests. We talked about it before in terms of Jim Crow, but here we're talking about to be able to come here that you had to have certain skills. Later on in the 20s, which we'll talk about when we get to the 20s, but it was also a very racist time. And so we have the Emergency Quota Act, which limited immigration, the National Origins Act, which said, all right, well, you can come if you're from Northern and Western Europe. And you might want to pause it and look at this chart. I think it's so interesting, all the different immigrants and where people are from. Obviously, you look at this dark purple, and yeah, even today, there's, a lot of people of African heritage that are in the South. You look here at the purple, and, it's a lot of Irish here, and specifically Dutchess County is this light blue, which is German. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you for the next little segment here.